But more Japanese soldiers, under the influence of adrenaline, tightly pulled the trigger, bringing in more heavy weapons. A heavy machine gun was set up, with 12.7mm bullets capable of penetrating thick steel plates, even some lightly armored vehicles. The shell of the lobster sea monster couldn't withstand the machine gun's barrage, shattering the shell with blood splattering, bullets creating palm-sized bloody holes on its body. However, its massive size provided it with immense tenacious life force, because it incorporated Su Jie's diluted trace holy blood and the trace bloodline of a thousand-handed centipede, granting it incredible resistance and recovery ability against fatal injuries, stimulating its ferocity once wounded and bloodied. The lobster sea monster was filled with murderous intention, charging towards the heavy machine gun position attacking it. All Japanese soldiers blocking its path were slapped to death, demonstrating terrifying might. The two Japanese soldiers operating the heavy machine gun turned pale, unable to contain their inner fear when the lobster sea monster was just tens of meters away, abandoning the heavy machine gun and turning to flee. Bang! Bang! Having run less than 10 meters, the pursuing lobster sea monster curled its serpent body around the two, pinching each with a claw, stuffing them into its mouth, and violently biting them into pieces. Bang! A bullet fired from a sniper rifle precisely exploded one of the lobster sea monster's eyes when it paused. With its eye destroyed, the lobster sea monster convulsed violently and struggled. Taking advantage of this gap, the Japanese soldiers brought out a rocket launcher, launching several rockets in succession, finally taking down the highly resilient monster. The lobster's upper body was blasted to pieces. However, all the Japanese soldiers on site couldn't smile, because the lobster sea monster's rampage just now caused nearly 100 casualties among them. The vicinity was filled with fragments of Japanese soldiers' bodies, along with those poisoned and corroded into white skeletons, constantly wailing in agony, plunging the surviving Japanese soldiers' morale to rock bottom. They had just entered the city, only to encounter such tragic casualties, leaving every Japanese soldier frightened to their core. The same scenario unfolded across various Japanese front lines. The Japanese soldiers entering here suffered a heavy blow. The 3rd Division had barely advanced a few hundred meters into Gashan County when many frontline units were routed out, rolling and crawling, while those remaining struggled bitterly, trembling under the threat of mutant sea monsters, with rescue telegrams sent one after another. The 3rd Division had no choice, losing nearly 1,000 men in such a short assault, an incredibly frightening number in today's warfare. Even though they had artillery and mortars and Japanese warplanes patrolling overhead, they couldn't indiscriminately bomb Gashan County due to concern for survivors inside the city and domestic public opinion, severely limiting their firepower output. Helpless, the 3rd Division had to halt the attack, awaiting reinforcements. Though the military command asked the soldiers to overcome difficulties, the lower-rank soldiers refused, thinking it's not you risking your life with the monsters while you high-ranking officers sit safely in the rear and bark orders, as if treating us like fools. This wait lasted the entire afternoon, with nightfall rendering the 3rd Division even more hesitant to attack. It's obvious, entering a city to fight monsters in the dark would mean not knowing how they even died. Fortunately, by the next day, with military orders, more reinforcements arrived in Gashan County, including the 10th Division, the 14th Brigade, the 15th Armored Group, and the 4th Engineer Group. By this time, over 20,000 Japanese soldiers had gathered in Gashan County, especially with the arrival of the 4th Engineer Group, which efficiently cleared the blocked vehicles on the streets, allowing the armored units to barely pass through. The 15th Armored Group also brought crucial armored firepower, greatly enhancing the Japanese soldiers' heavy weaponry configuration. Upon the reinforcements' arrival, multiple Japanese divisions attempted to assault Gashan County again, with Japanese soldiers advancing, eliminating any monsters encountered and saving survivors. Following this, with growing manpower, more and more survivors were gathered, and some sea monsters were wiped out. Of course, the Japanese soldiers also suffered significant casualties, as survivors often hid in buildings. Once soldiers entered such narrow, complex environments, casualties were inevitable when encountering mutant sea monsters. Conversely, on the streets, Japanese soldiers leveraged their hot weapons, aided by armored units, achieving greater lethal effect on mutant sea monsters in open areas, while significantly reducing their own casualties. The large-caliber anti-air machine guns and tank guns mounted on the armored units inflicted devastating damage on the mutant sea monsters in open areas, leaving most mutated monsters unable to withstand such firepower. With infantry following the armored units, equipped with heavy machine guns, anti-material sniper rifles, rocket launchers, and single-soldier anti-tank missiles, and accompanied by their numbers, they were finally able to barely start pushing the front line forward. Tough as the battles were, Japanese soldiers indeed continued reclaiming lost ground, while gathering increasing numbers of survivors. Little did they know, the Japanese soldiers were merely purging the outskirts of Gashan County. The true city center was yet unseen by the Japanese soldiers. Through continuous combat, Japanese soldiers accumulated richer combat experience against sea monsters, gradually penetrating into the core city area of Gashan County. The sea monsters are attacking. On the street, a Japanese battalion-level unit is engaged in a fierce battle. Several armored vehicles and tanks block the street, forming a steel shield wall. The 30mm shells from the armored vehicles are scattered, mixed with tracers, creating a blue bullet chain. The dozen or so sea monsters charging forward are pierced instantly. Some have limbs severed directly. Their roars and growls are earth-shattering. Boom! The tank main gun flashes, hitting a 7-meter-long sea monster at the front, blasting it into pieces, blood and mud splattering the ground. The accompanying light infantry quickly clean up any remaining sea monsters within view, suffering only a loss of 20 or so of their own. This is the power of human heat weapons. Even those terrifying sea monsters cannot withstand them in open areas. That's Yufeng Square ahead. All units advance in order. This several hundred-strong Japanese battalion-level unit fights all the way into Yufeng Square, the most prosperous square in Gashan County, also the core area of the county. But upon entering, many Japanese soldiers witness a scene they'll never forget. Above Yufeng Square, using surrounding high-rise buildings as a foundation, strands of white spider silk weave into a large web. From the web, strands of silk hang, each suspending thousands of white insect cocoons at varying heights. The entire square is eerily silent, quiet enough to hear one's heartbeat, entirely different from the frenzy of mutant monsters seen on other streets. What is this? The commanding officer, Banben Taizai, cautiously steps forward and looks at a 2-meter-tall insect cocoon wrapped in spider silk before him. He pulls out his dagger and begins cutting into the cocoon. The silk is very tough, but with effort, Banben Taizai manages to cut open the cocoon. However, the scene inside catches him off guard. Inside the cocoon is a man completely covered in mucus. Help! Help me! Save me! This Japanese man is still alive. He opens his eyes and finally utters a weak plea for help. Are you all right? I'll get you out of here. Banben Taizai instinctively moves to assist him, but halfway through the motion, the man's muscles suddenly start to convulse violently. It hurts, they're coming out. Aya! The man screams in agony. Banben Taizai observes strange bulges under the man's skin, as though little bugs are crawling beneath it. It is then that Banben Taizai notices the man's belly is as round and large as a 10-month pregnant woman's. Upon closer inspection, faint squeaking sounds can be heard. Help! I don't want to die. They're about to hatch. They're coming out. The man reaches out in despair. Banben Taizai's face pales, and he steps back quickly. Bang! The man falls to the ground, his body like shattered porcelain, his belly skin tearing open. In the next moment, countless finger-sized bugs crawl out from his abdomen, numbering hundreds. The Japanese man's body has been turned into an insect nest, consumed as nourishment for the larvae's growth. These bugs resemble a mix of spiders and crabs, with furry limbs, sharp mouthparts, and pale green pincers that seem to be venomous. A nearby soldier is approached by these small spiders, and as soon as their fangs bite, his complexion turns green, his body becomes paralyzed. Then, the little spiders crawl into his mouth, ears, and nose, seemingly wanting to enter and continue developing, absorbing nutrients to mature. their screams sending chills down one's spine. Fire! Nearby soldiers, faces white, decisively pull their triggers, shattering the small spiders on the ground. But from the man's body, more small spiders continue to crawl out. A flamethrower soldier steps forward, aiming at the man's body on the ground, unleashing scorching flames that char the corpse and roast all crawling small spiders to death. However, their action of killing these small spiders instantly triggers a chain reaction. Thousands of white spider silk insect cocoons in Yufeng Square continuously break open. Bodies turned into insect nests for cultivating larvae fall down. Each body's abdomen releases dense packs of small spiders swarming out. In an instant, millions of small spiders crawl into every corner of Yufeng Square. This scene, if seen by anyone with arachnophobia, would cause them to faint immediately from terror. The hundreds of Japanese soldiers on site are terrified, their faces ashen and limbs cold, watching as the tidal wave of millions of small spiders approach. Fear seizes each person's body and mind. Run, run fast. Banben Taizai screams, losing any desire to fight. This magnitude of small spiders is far scarier than some dozen-meter-sized mutant sea monsters. Quantity has turned into quality. The entire battalion-level unit, numbering hundreds, descends into chaos, everyone turning to flee. But the speed of ordinary humans on two legs is not faster than the small spiders. A Japanese soldier lagging behind screams as a small spider bites his ankle, venom paralyzing him and causing his calves to convulse. He runs only a few steps before falling. Soon, the dense pack of small spiders covers his body like a tide. Mixed with his painful screams, countless small spiders biting and devouring his flesh, until less than a minute later, only a bare skeleton remains on the ground. Not a trace of flesh left, every bit consumed by the small spiders. Constantly there are Japanese soldiers left behind, devoured into skeletons by the small spiders, their deaths tragic and gruesome. Before these Japanese soldiers' last moments, some despaired and opened fire, but against spiders of this caliber, bullets are utterly useless. Wait for me. I haven't gotten in the vehicle yet. There's no space on the vehicle anymore. Let go quickly. If you won't let me live, neither will you. On sight, only those armored vehicles could outrun the small spiders. However, due to limited space, Japanese soldiers on the scene fought fiercely, even to the point of shooting, desperate to seize a spot, shooting at their own comrades. Get lost! Banben Taizai shot dead a Japanese soldier trying to climb onto the tank's top, watching the tide of small spiders receding, a hint of a survivor's smile just beginning to spread on his face when the ground ahead suddenly trembled. The street surface caved in, forming a giant pit. An armored vehicle at the front couldn't brake in time, plunging headfirst into the pit. Creak! With the sound of steel twisting, a gigantic monster emerged from underground. It stood over 50 meters tall, combining both spider and crab characteristics, somewhat resembling a spider crab from the sea. Its 28 long legs crushed the concrete below, its reflective shell casting a cold metallic sheen, an overwhelming oppressive sensation looming. Banben Taizai's eyes froze, his hands and feet cold, a chill rising from his soles up to the top of his skull. At this moment, it was as though he saw his great-grandmother beckoning to him. Buzz! The moment this enormous spider crab sea monster appeared, the swarm of small spiders trembled with excitement, screeching. Because the spider crab sea monster before them was the mother of those small spiders at Yufeng Square. The spider crab sea monster, aggressive during production, nearby mutant sea monsters dared not approach. Hence no creatures appeared at Yufeng Square, making it the spider crab sea monster's childcare territory. Upon seeing the spider crab sea monster emerge from the ground, all Japanese soldiers were dumbfounded. Its terrifying height and size akin to a walking skyscraper, merely looking at its body makes one nearly lose the courage to resist. Boom! The spider crab sea monster fixed its scarlet, ferocious eyes on the Japanese troops, charging with a rumble, the earth shaking, atop an armored vehicle. The machine gun fired constantly while retreating. Yet the machine gun, capable of piercing reinforced concrete walls, couldn't break through the spider crab sea monster at all. Catching up in the blink of an eye, with a stomp from the spider crab sea monster, The armored vehicle weighing over 10 tons was crushed into steel pancakes, its 20-plus Japanese soldiers inside squeezed into sandwich biscuits, blood seeping from the iron pancake continuously. Roar! Vehicle after vehicle of armored units flipped and smashed. The spider crab sea monster roared, suddenly spraying a massive web. Many Japanese infantry were enveloped, pinned to the ground, soon covered by small spiders, becoming their delightful feast. Fire! Fire quickly! Banben Taizai shouted hysterically, the tank turret rotating. A shell emerged from the barrel, hitting the spider crab sea monster. Given its 50-meter height, even a blind man could hit such a massive target. However, the astonishingly powerful tank shell merely shattered a small part of the spider crab's shell, inflicting merely a minor injury on the gigantic spider crab sea monster. The spider crab sea monster raised its head high, leaping directly onto the tank, distorting the barrel and flipping the tank. The main battle tank, weighing tens of tons, stomped ruthlessly into a heap of scrap metal. Banben Taizai's rifle fell to the ground, gazing at the invincible monster before him, his heart full of regret for entering Gashan County. Thud! Banben Taizai's regrets. The spider crab sea monster would never understand. The next moment, he was sent flying by a stomp, landing amidst the small spider swarm, amid chilling, despairing screams, devoured into flesh and blood, becoming a white skeleton. Similar scenes unfolded in several parts of Gashan County. As Japanese soldiers entered the core urban area, they encroached upon the territory of the strongest sea monsters, immediately flipping the predator-prey relationship. One by one, Japanese soldiers were slaughtered by these formidable sea monsters, once saviors of survivors, now themselves entrapped, becoming prey to these powerful sea monsters. Even armored troops struggle to inflict any harm on these gigantic sea creatures. Once the armored troops were eliminated, Japanese soldiers entering Gashan County lost reliance on their armored units. The remaining mutant sea monsters brazenly joined the hunting feast, and the 20,000 soldiers entering Gashan County became a delicacy, devoured by the sea monsters. In the end, when sunset came and darkness returned, barely 1 in 10 Japanese soldiers managed to escape Gashan County, with most Japanese soldiers eternally left in this city. As the matter was reported by journalists and media worldwide, it immediately caused a global outcry and forced nations across the globe to pay heed for the first time to the threat capability of these sea monsters. Over 10,000 Japanese soldiers perished tragically in Gashan County, buried in the aftermath. The entire political and civilian landscape of Japan trembled thrice. The opposition parties began furiously criticizing Shiyuan Temple Eating and his officials, accusing them of incompetence that led to such a tragedy. The public was also extremely dissatisfied, with the families of the deceased Japanese soldiers demanding apologies and compensation from the government. A massive wave of public opinion surged nationwide, urging the authorities to promptly eliminate the monsters entrenched in Gashan County to prevent them from returning to the sea and threatening other coastal areas. Japan's high-ranking officials were in turmoil, unable to cover up such enormous casualties. This pressure further transmitted to the military, landing on Sakura Defense Minister Sugiyama Hideaki. To address the situation, Sugiyama Hideaki put aside his status and personally went to Gashan County. At this moment, over 30,000 Japanese soldiers had gathered in Gashan County, but they no longer dared to enter, fearing the powerful sea monsters located in the city center. They had been frightened into submission. Within 3 days, Gashan County must be taken. I don't care how you do it. Recollecting Shiyuan Temple Eating's coercive order before his departure, Sugiyama Hideaki sternly gazed at the present group of advanced military officers and ordered coldly, "Launch a new offensive on Gashan County, no matter the casualties. I want to see this city back in our hands." But there are over a dozen Dominator-level monsters in Gashan County. The officers and staff present displayed expressions of difficulty. The so-called Dominator-level monsters were a simple classification by Japan for the monsters in Gashan County. Japan categorized monsters over 50 meters as Dominator level, over 20 meters as large, 10 meters as medium, and under 5 meters as small. Seeing these officers' expressions, Sugiyama Hideaki's face remained cold as he continued, "I allow you to use all heavy firepower. The military no longer restricts this aspect of weaponry. Upon hearing this, the numerous officers on site suddenly had their eyes light up. Obviously, though Sugiyama Hideaki did not explicitly address the fate of the survivors in the city, it's not something that could be openly discussed. However, everyone understood Sugiyama Hideaki's subtext, which was to ignore the remaining survivors in the city and unleash unrestricted bombardment on Gashan County. Inevitably, some survivors would be incidentally harmed or even killed by their own firepower. In such a circumstance, the military could launch a full-scale counterattack on Gashan County. If sufficient powerful heavy firepower, artillery, air force, and missile units were combined, the strong sea monsters in Gashan County would still be of no avail. The inability to capture Gashan County before was entirely due to the military's prohibition on using heavy weapons, which left them handicapped. Yes, we will definitely take Gashan County within 3 days. The officers on site vowed, their morale soaring. Soon, the Japanese military once again organized a new round of offensives against Gashan County. The first to break the silence was the artillery bombardment action from Japan's artillery units against Gashan County. Rows of artillery lined up outside the city, including self-propelled howitzers, towed howitzers, and multiple rocket artillery. With a command, the barrage was unleashed like 1,000 cannons firing simultaneously, with heavy shells raining down on Gashan County, fiercely bombarding areas densely populated with monsters based on intelligence gathered from aerial reconnaissance. In an instant, the city was engulfed in flames, smoke spread, and buildings collapsed. Many sea monsters only heard a sharp screech before a flash of fire blinded them, and their massive bodies were torn apart, with limbs and remnants flung by shockwaves. Humanity's powerful thermal weapons, especially heavy firepower, overwhelmed most mutant sea monsters, utterly incapable of withstanding such a level of bombardment. A single 155mm shell could crush a tank weighing tens of tons. Dealing with most mutant sea monsters required merely one shot. Following closely were the Air Force strikes. In the central urban area of Gashan County, there were dozens of sea monsters like the octopus sea monster and spider crab sea monster, each similar in length to tens of meters. These were the pinnacle among mutant sea monsters, exhibiting the highest genetic stability, blood concentration, and mutation intensity. Each had consumed and killed numerous counterparts to grow to such an extent, earning the name Dominator-level sea monsters by Japan. The previous death of over 10,000 Japanese soldiers in Gashan County was due to attacks by these Dominator-level sea monsters. Whoosh! A whistle filled with oppressive power swept across the skies above Gashan County, as a squadron of F-35 fighter jets zoomed past, dropping several napalm bombs into the central Yufeng Square of the city. In an instant, Yufeng Square was engulfed in flames, with intense fire blazing. In this place, a large amount of white spider silk and hordes of small spiders were caught in the sweeping flames of the napalm bombs, burning with sizzling screams, quickly turning into charcoal. Boom! The ground upheaved as a 50-meter-tall spider crab sea monster crawled out, watching in fury as its offspring suffered such a fate, emitting an angry roar. But soon after, several more air-to-ground missiles were dropped, their high-explosive warheads hitting the spider crab sea monster with terrifying power precisely. In just an instant, most of the spider crab sea monster's body was blasted apart, leaving a bloody mess of organs on the ground, killing it instantly. Regardless of how formidable its restorative self-healing power was, with its body shattered to pieces, it was hopeless. Under tank main gun fire, the spider crab sea monster might have suffered only minor injuries, but now it succumbed after being hit by several successive missiles. After all, tank shells weighed merely 20 or 30 kilograms, whereas the explosive TNT in a missile alone weighed 400 or 500 kilograms. There was simply no comparison. The might was incomparably greater. The fighter jets soared high in the sky. Even though some sea monsters had flying capabilities, they couldn't keep up with the jet's speed and were quickly dealt with using air-to-air missiles and ground-based anti-aircraft fire. With no aerial threats, the Air Force jets could unleash their firepower without restraint, using their air superiority to deliver precise missile strikes against any Dominator-level sea monsters that surfaced. eliminating them immediately to create favorable conditions for the ground forces' advance. After hours of continuous bombing by the Air Force and artillery, the Japanese ground troops began to enter Gishan County, primarily with large units of armored vehicles and tanks, escorted by armed helicopters overhead. The ordinary small and medium-sized monsters found it very difficult to breach the powerful web of firepower and pose a threat to these steel beasts. As for the large monsters and Dominator-level monsters, those were handled by the missile units and the Air Force, making the entire advance more smooth and easy compared to before. However, it was the small and micro-sized monsters that often hid within city buildings, moving stealthily. The Japanese army could not level every building in Gishan County. They ultimately needed to send troops in for reconnaissance and search operations. This situation inevitably led to close-quarters combat, causing significant casualties to the Japanese soldiers during street fights. Nevertheless, relying on their numerical advantage, the Japanese army gradually seized the streets of Gishan County, their formidable firepower sweeping away all enemies in their path. However, the only consequence of such firepower bombardment was that many buildings in Gishan County were riddled with holes, turning the entire city into a war zone. The Japanese survivors lurking in Gishan County suffered heavy casualties under the army's bombing and airstrikes. Just as the Japanese forces were advancing and reclaiming most of Gishan County, an order arrived from Tokyo. All advancing Japanese troops were ordered to halt, instead sealing off Gishan County to prevent any sea monsters from escaping. This command left the Japanese soldiers below puzzled. They were about to recapture the entire Gishan County, so why stop at this critical moment? But as a large number of soldiers in military uniforms, with blonde hair and blue eyes, either with white skin or black skin, arrived in Gishan County to begin taking over the Japanese soldiers' lines, all the Japanese soldiers suddenly realized and then were incredibly outraged. These newly arrived soldiers had a common designation, the U.S. military stationed in Sakura. As a defeated nation in World War II, Japan is the country with the most overseas troops from the beautiful country, with about 50,000 beautiful country soldiers stationed in Japan, deploying units such as the 7th Fleet, the 5th Air Force, and the 3rd Marine Corps, with as many as 113 military bases present. After these beautiful country soldiers arrived in Gishan County, they immediately started driving out the Japanese soldiers with arrogance, only letting them handle some menial tasks, and then began sealing off the entire Gishan County, not allowing any mutant sea monsters to escape, nor the Japanese survivors to leave. The beautiful country military completely surrounded Gishan County, bringing in a large amount of experimental instruments and research equipment to establish an institution called the Gishan County Biological Research Institute nearby. It was evident that the beautiful country intended to turn Gishan County into a sea monster biosphere and research laboratory, studying the secrets of the sea monsters there, completely disregarding the lives of the Japanese in Gishan County. This move naturally caused quite a stir in the international community, and domestically, there was an outcry, forcing the Japanese government to hold a press conference to answer questions. At the press conference, Prime Minister Shiun Temple Eating personally attended and invited the commander of the beautiful country stationed in Japan, Fro Hernandez, to participate as well. Sumimasen, I'm truly sorry, everyone, for the tragedy that occurred in Gishan County. Being the Prime Minister, I failed to protect the life and safety of the people. I'm very sorry. As soon as he appeared, Prime Minister Shiun Temple Eating performed a triple bow, bending over for up to 3 minutes under the flashlights of countless reporters. This Q&A session was broadcast live across Japan, and many Japanese, upon seeing this scene on television, felt much less anger towards Shiun Temple Eating. After all, Shiun Temple Eating had already apologized, so what more could they want from him? Prime Minister, now that Gishan County is under the control of the beautiful country military, have you secretly reached some shady agreement with the beautiful country, completely disregarding the lives of your own people, allowing the beautiful country to do as they please in Gishan County? When it came to the question and answer session, a French journalist stood up impatiently. Shiun Temple Eating's face darkened, truly believing he wanted to do this, but they also had to consider what position the beautiful country held in Japan. Even if he wanted to refuse, it wasn't something he could achieve. Of course, he certainly couldn't answer that way. Misunderstanding. It's all a misunderstanding. The reason for inviting the beautiful country to station in Gashan County is purely because the beautiful country's military strength is more robust and can ensure security, and the beautiful country's scientific research capabilities are top-notch in the world. With their help, we can sooner uncover the secrets of these sea monsters. Shiyuan Temple Eating declared, earnestly providing a perfect excuse for his actions. Not all of Gashan County has been retaken, and there are still many Japanese civilians inside. I've seen videos uploaded by survivors in Gashan County, saying that the beautiful country military isn't rescuing them and is even preventing them from leaving Gashan County, leaving them to become food for the monsters. Another reporter stood up, this time from Russia. Fro Hernandez, commander of the beautiful country stationed in Japan, picked up the microphone and said calmly, "These claims are pure slander. We have detected that due to prolonged contact with sea monsters, the Japanese in Gashan County have been infected with an unknown virus. If they come out and we fail to control it, it will lead to widespread devastation. Therefore, reluctantly and out of necessity, our military chose to assist the Japan Self-Defense Force in initially locking down Gashan County. Additionally, nearby Gashan County, several new quarantine camps are under urgent construction. We will regularly airdrop living supplies to Gashan County. The sea monsters in the city are now few in number and pose no threat to the safety of the survivors inside. Once the quarantine camps are completed, we can relocate the survivors from Gashan County into them. If there are no issues at that time, we will naturally allow them to return to their normal lives." Upon hearing Fro Hernandez's words, many reporters on site raised a big question mark on their foreheads.
Quarantine camp?
Why does that sound so familiar? Have you forgotten 2 years ago, the Jekka group used this tactic against the Yutai? Gosh, no wonder it sounds so familiar. The Jekka group used the zombie virus to isolate the Yutai, and the beautiful country is using the sea monster virus to isolate the Japanese. The world really is a cycle. The reporters beneath the stage whispered among themselves, their expressions quite peculiar. The tactic once used by the Jekka group on Yutai country is now being used by the beautiful country on Japan. To be fair, the two entities really have some kind of tacit understanding in this regard. There were also reporters from the Jekka group present, looking at Fro Hernandez with speechless expressions. Darn, the beautiful country learned the real trick. In the past, it was always the Jekka group learning from the eagle to cross the river, but today the eagle learned it. I have a question. It said that the Gashan County incident was caused by your release of nuclear wastewater. Some research institutions have confirmed that excessive nuclear material residues have been detected on sea monster remains. When will Japan stop releasing nuclear wastewater? A reporter from the Jekka group held a microphone, asking the question that many were concerned about. The release of nuclear wastewater has nothing to do with this incident with the sea monsters. The reasons for the appearance of sea monsters are still under investigation and confirmation. Once specific details are worked out, we will fully disclose them to the public. Shiyuan Temple Eating denied it without thinking. Not to mention that it's still uncertain whether the sea monsters were caused by them, but even if they were, they couldn't admit it. That would make Japan a target of scorn in the international community, and even domestically, there would be condemnation from the public and from him as the Prime Minister. After all, the casualties in Gashan County are there, and admitting it would mean he has to take full responsibility for the sea monster attack in Gashan County. Seeing Shiyuan Temple Eating's shameless demeanor, many reporters in the audience were completely unconvinced, but there was no way to make him admit it. After the Q&A session ended, the sea monster incident did not conclude there. Various countries around the world began dispatching personnel to explore the truth behind these sea monsters, curious about how these sea monsters came to be. A week later, in the sea area around the Ryukyu Islands, an oceanographic research ship bearing the Japanese flag was sailing there, accompanied by 2 military vessels from the beautiful country. On the research ship gathered some of the top biological experts, paleontologists, microbiologists, and even ancient history experts from the beautiful country. These were all world-class experts, most of whom were invited by the beautiful country, but naturally these experts were also highly interested in the matter. Now, with the Gashan County sea monster incident causing a big stir, This brand new species of sea monster has completely piqued the curiosity of these experts. Many believe that this is a groundbreaking discovery that can be recorded in history. If the secrets of these sea monsters can be uncovered, human advances in technology and biology might progress by leaps and bounds. The locator is still working. Decoy fish position 27,183.13551. Sonar system functioning normally. No unusual signals detected. Transmit decoy fish trajectory to headquarters. Inside the research ship, a large number of personnel were busy and tense. Continue following the decoy fish. Do not lose the target. An elderly man with white hair, yet energetic, and whose blue eyes were focused intensely on the sea chart, spoke up. His name is Viola Bailey, and he is the world's top marine biologist. He has discovered hundreds of new marine species, has knowledge of ocean currents, species, microbiology, geology, and botany, and is also the chief scientist of this team. Viola Bailey is currently tracking a decoy fish, which is actually a sea monster, a medium-sized sea monster. After getting control of Gashan County, the beautiful country immediately joined the research on the sea monsters. A large number of sea monster corpses in the city were used by the beautiful country for research and dissection, and even many live specimens were captured. Through research, scientists from the beautiful country discovered that these sea monsters were indeed mutated from ordinary marine life. Most of their genes matched marine species characteristics, and a large amount of nuclear material residue was detected within their body tissues. Most importantly, the blood, flesh, and even genes within these sea monsters contained substances and genomic sequences that were completely unknown and incomprehensible to them. These peculiar blood substances and genomic sequences seem to be the reason for the emergence of the sea monsters. Some people once extracted the unique genetic material from these sea monsters and attempted to infuse it into the human body. The result was that the prisoners used for the experiment exploded and died on the spot, unable to withstand such infusion. However, this also thrilled the beautiful country. What doesn't work now doesn't mean it won't work in the future. If they can understand this genetic material, they might extract and purify it in the future, researching a version suitable for the human body, applying it to humans, and even the high officials and plutocrats of the beautiful country have already fantasized about using this method to strengthen their constitution and extend their lifespan. Some have suggested that this genetic material, if it can strengthen the human body, somehow sounds a lot like the genetic warriors from Jekka Group. Sea monsters possess many unique abilities, and genetic warriors also have various similar physical special abilities. Later, someone speculated whether the Jekka Group was the mastermind behind the sea monster incident. However, this proposal was quickly dismissed because the beautiful country had also mastered the remains of genetic warriors' flesh. The beautiful country conducted extensive research on the existence of genetic warriors. Although they could not cultivate genetic warriors themselves, they knew that within genetic warriors, there was a gene similar to that of insects. Combined with the widespread insect farms of Jekka Group, the beautiful country believed that the Jekka Group was cultivating genetic warriors through insects, not related to the ocean. Moreover, upon comparison, there was not a shred of commonality between the substances within the genetic warriors and the sea monsters. Although the Jekka Group was ruled out as a suspect, this further piqued the interest of the beautiful country, as there was a possibility of researching beings comparable to, or even surpassing genetic warriors, creating the existence of mutants. However, because the sea monsters in Gashan County died, even when their bodies were kept under low temperatures, those unique substances and genomes rapidly dissipated and collapsed. Hence, aside from researching, the beautiful country highly valued the existing sea monsters in Gashan County. These creatures are the only source for studying that peculiar genetic material, and the beautiful country is reluctant to kill the sea monsters in Gashan County, protecting them just like giant pandas. Simultaneously, scientists were tasked to find the reasons causing the mutations of these marine organisms. To achieve this, scientists implanted tracking devices in some mutated sea monsters, released them back into the ocean, and then tracked their paths. Many marine organisms have migratory characteristics and will return to their birthplace to mate and reproduce. By tracking these mutated sea monsters, It might be possible that these marine creatures will return to the sea area responsible for their mutations. The research vessel before them is one of the many sent out by the beautiful country. Mr. Viola, is what we are doing really effective? We've been drifting on the sea for 3 whole days. Beside him, a beautiful country officer wearing a colonel's rank spoke up. His name was Eller Wilson, representing the beautiful country government. At least it's our most likely plan to achieve success. In scientific research, no one can guarantee you success. Sometimes a stroke of luck is the key to success or failure. Now, it's up to us to win this gamble with luck. Viola shrugged, pointed to the signal data sent back by the tracker, and said, "We've worked so hard to get this far, and without an answer, I won't be satisfied." Eller spread his hands, saying, "All right, you're the expert. I'll listen to you." Viola chuckled, looking at the fierce sea breeze outside and the endless azure ocean, suddenly said, "Trust me, I have a premonition that we may be getting closer to the truth now." Premonition? Can those things really be reliable? Eller felt a bit helpless. In his view, research is a serious matter, and how can one rely on such ethereal sixth senses? "I've always had pretty good luck." Viola didn't say much more and kept his eyes on the sea condition data on the electronic screen. An hour passed and it was lunchtime. Just when Viola planned to have lunch, an excited voice suddenly cried out, "Report!" The bait fish's tracker stopped moving. It's diving deeper. 500 meters, 1,000 meters, 1,500 meters. Boom! The ship suddenly buzzed with excitement as all the scientists gathered around. It might have found its way home. Viola's eyes were filled with excitement as he patted Eller's shoulder next to him and laughed heartily. "What did I say? I told you my luck is pretty good, right?" "You were right." Eller gave a thumbs up. "Where exactly is the bait fish? More details." Olvera pursued, squeezing to the front of the crowd. The employee managing the tracker raised his head and said, "Here. Here is the Mariana Trench." Mariana Trench. Hearing this news, the surrounding experts were slightly stunned. It is the deepest trench in the world, with the deepest point exceeding 10,000 meters, and is well known globally. Viola still had a hint of joy on her face, but upon hearing about this area, her expression turned more solemn, and she asked repeatedly, "Can our Challenger submersible dive into the Mariana Trench?" "Yes, Professor Viola. The Challenger submersible we have prepared is the most advanced submarine of the beautiful country, capable of diving into depths of 10,000 meters. Eller responded from the side, stating that for this scientific research to find the cause of the mutated sea monster, the beautiful country spared no expense. They not only invited top scholars and experts from around the world, but also equipped the mission with top-notch gear. For example, the Challenger submersible provided on the research vessel cost over $100 million, and the beautiful country generously allocated it to the research ship. "That's good." Viola breathed a sigh of relief, as the sea monster being tracked had already descended to a depth of 7,000 meters and was still diving deeper. This depth had already exceeded the limits of most conventional submersibles. If the pursuit were to fail because of the equipment, Viola would regret it for a lifetime. 8,000, 9,000, 10,000 meters. The bait fish has reached the depth of the Mariana Trench, and it stopped in that area. When the tracked sea monster stopped at a depth of 10,000 meters, as everyone expected, the sea monster's ultimate destination was indeed the Mariana Trench. "Get moving, prepare the Challenger deep submersible. We're going to find that sea monster's location." Olvera excitedly ordered, and everyone started to move. A depth of 10,000 meters exceeded the sonar detection range, so they had to deploy the deep submersible and use real-time imaging to understand what was on the seabed that drew the sea monster from thousands of miles away. Amidst tense activity, aboard the research vessel, the hoist placed a submersible more than 10 meters long by the side of the ship, and the word Challenger was emblazoned on its surface. This was a manned submersible. It was said that originally, international director Kalin specially invested heavily in its development to shoot a sci-fi movie. The director even personally piloted this submersible to a depth of 10,000 meters to gather film material and collect inspiration. Later, the technology of the submersible caught the attention of the beautiful country's military, and it was further developed in the beautiful country's hands, becoming more advanced and used to record underwater currents and geology in global sea areas. Next to the Challenger submersible, a black male and a blonde female were warming up, wearing specialized suits. They were the Challenger submersible's pilots. Barnes Khurana, this mission is entrusted to you. This action concerns our beautiful country's future development plan. As long as you successfully capture useful information, the country will not treat you poorly. Eller earnestly walked up, embracing the two of them. Colonel Eller, don't worry. We are the best deep-diving drivers, and we will definitely find the trace of that sea monster for you. The black man Barnes flexed his arm to show off his mighty biceps, flashing a big white smile, full of confidence. I feel the same as my partner. We are not novices diving into the deep sea for the first time. I have executed deep-sea missions over 32 times, without any issues. Khurana wrapped one arm around Barnes and the other around Eller, gesturing a peace sign. Come on, everyone smile. In front of them, someone held a camera, capturing this moment, which could potentially mark a new chapter in the rise of the beautiful country, with profound significance. Haha! It seems our excellent guys and wonderful ladies are in high spirits. I believe in you. Viola let out a hearty laugh, enthusiastically leaning in. As the camera clicked, capturing the scene with the blue sky, ocean, and Challenger deep submersible in the background. The four stood together, perfectly recorded by the camera. Upon this, Barnes and Khurana swiftly climbed onto the Challenger submersible, waved to everyone on the research ship, and entered the cabin. Challenger submersible self-check. The hull is intact without any breaches, engines, and propellers are undergoing test runs. All instrument panels are operating normally. Oxygen supply is at 100%. Communication channels are clear. After a series of checks confirmed that the Challenger was in full working condition, the hoist slowly released the securing hooks, allowing the Challenger submersible to sink into the water. Gurgle. Waves splashed against the Challenger, and as air was expelled from inside, the Challenger began to sink into the sea. 100 meters, 500 meters, 2,000 meters. On the research ship, Olvera, Eller, and others had returned to the command room, where they could connect to the camera on the Challenger through the screen to observe the external and internal situation of the Challenger. As the depth increased, the speed of the Challenger gradually slowed down. Initially, various fish could be seen in the seawater, but as the depth decreased, the fish became sparse, and even visibility greatly reduced as the sun's rays could not penetrate such deep waters. Beyond 5,000 meters, the seawater turned completely dark, unreachable by sunlight. The Challenger turned on its onboard spotlight like a deep-sea beast opening its eyes, continuing its descent into deeper waters. 6,000 meters, 8,000 meters, 10,000 meters. When the Challenger reached the depths of 10,000 meters, everyone's hearts were in their throats, staring at the screen without blinking, afraid of missing any crucial information. Report, we have reached the deep sea at 10,000 meters. Everything is going smoothly. Barnes faced the camera, giving a thumbs up, knowing that dozens of people aboard the research vessel were watching him. Life detectors on, water probe open, terrain map simulation generated. Sailing at triple speed. Current location is 10,500 meters deep. Please advise. Khurana gripped the joystick, reporting one data indicator after another, piloting the Challenger slowly through the quiet darkness of the deep sea. The baitfish is positioned at about 12 kilometers in the 3 o'clock direction. Maintain current speed. Proceed at minimum speed. Avoid making noise to prevent provoking an attack from that sea monster. Olvera gave the order. At times like this, mistakes must not be made. Understood. Khurana nodded, piloting the Challenger at minimum speed forward, with the reserves of power and oxygen allowing them to stay in the deep sea for 3 hours. As the Challenger moved forward, the scenery of the Mariana Trench was also transmitted to the research vessel. The icy, lifeless seabed bore no signs of life activity, and jagged bizarre stone walls and ravines were scattered around, resembling the wrinkled face of an old man. A forbidden zone for life. Takes great courage to operate in this place. Fortunately, the two aboard the Challenger were experienced, steadily controlling its navigation through the depths. The baitfish is 8 kilometers away from you. 6 kilometers remaining. Maintain speed. 4 kilometers. Reduce the brightness of the searchlight. Do not stir the baitfish. The research vessel's commands were continuously transmitted as the Challenger drew closer to the baitfish. To avoid disturbing the tracked sea monster, the Challenger maintained a low-speed silent running, even dimming the searchlight to the lowest level. After all, as a scientific submersible, the Challenger wasn't equipped with any weapons. If they attracted the sea monster's attention and were attacked, at the depth of 10,000 meters, certain doom awaited them. When the Challenger was 3 kilometers away from the tracked sea monster, suddenly, a faint light dawned from the front. The bright light, mingling with a hint of pale purple, seemed like a thin purple mist. Where is this light coming from? Is an underwater volcano erupting? Barnes and Karana were simultaneously surprised. The deep sea at 10,000 meters was pitch dark, except for molten rock from an underwater volcanic eruption would bring light here. No, it's not an underwater volcano. It's something else. On the research vessel, Olvera sprang up, eyes shining. As a top ocean expert, he knew that the light from an underwater volcanic eruption would not have this hue. Could it be some kind of luminous fish species? Impossible, the scope is too large. It might be some kind of luminous plant species. This is a life-forbidden zone of the deep sea. What plant species could survive here? The experts and scholars gathered furiously discussing, eyes wide open. Continue forward. Proceed carefully. Olvera commanded, eyes fixed on the screen, curiosity reaching its peak. The Challenger navigated at low speed. As it approached, the light grew more intense, illuminating the seabed as if a small sun had sunk beneath the waves. Gradually, as the Challenger advanced another 2 kilometers, the light transformed. Multicolored halos shimmered through the seawater, transforming the cold, dark waters into something splendid and beautiful. And the scene ahead was fully visible to the Challenger. God! What is this thing, an underwater garden? Barnes' mouth gaped wide enough to fit an apple, wearing an incredulous expression. I shouldn't be hallucinating, Barnes, pinch me. Karana's pupils shook until Barnes pinched her arm hard. The clear pain confirmed that this was not a dream or deep-sea illusion. What she saw was utterly real. In their view appeared an island that shouldn't have been here. A majestic island floating above the seabed. The first sight striking was a stone monument erected in the center of the island. The monument soared hundreds of meters high, resembling a divine sword planted in the island, presenting black and white colors with densely carved ancient runes. These runes flowed gently like a stream. The multicolored cold light emitted from this monument was the source of the underwater brightness. In the island zone facing the Challenger, the island was flourishing with all kinds of strange spirit roots. Golden Ganoderma and jade grass released their brilliance, and sweet liquid spring eyes gurgled. Towering ancient trees stood across, the smallest among them 100 meters tall. Moreover, one could see radiant palaces with glazed tiles, resplendent and magnificent, scattered around the island, which doesn't resemble natural wonders, but were creations of humanity. Barnes and Karana were utterly astonished. The pair anticipated encountering many conditions in the deep sea, yet never imagined observing such an island, such a wonder here. The shock wasn't just theirs. Aboard the research vessel, a multitude of experts witnessed this spectacle as if paralyzed by an immobilization spell, overwhelmed with shock, uttering various, "Oh my God," "Fake," "God," and other such phrases in disbelief, entirely devoid of their usual scholarly grace. What is this thing? Eller patted his face, trying to clear his mind, but everything in front of him was telling him that he really had witnessed a miracle happening right before his eyes. In the deep sea, tens of thousands of meters below, there existed such an island teeming with diverse strange flora, vibrant with life, and filled with magnificent buildings. If everything here were exposed, it would definitely astonish the world beyond imagination. Olvera was the first to react. He waved his arms frantically, overwhelmed with excitement. Haha! It seems we've found the sea monster's lair. I can definitely say that the reason those sea monsters mutate must be related to this island. Our discovery today will surely shock the entire world. So excited that his body trembled, Olvera was not just thinking about global prominence. What thrilled him more was that such an island, with its array of life surviving in the deep sea, overturned everything he had previously studied. For a scholar, the allure was more deadly than gold. That stone tablet is full of runes, and the runes are glowing and flowing. It's unbelievable, simply incredible. Who on earth built this? Was there really an alien civilization on Blue Star? Otherwise, I can't imagine what kind of technology could create an island like this in the deep sea. Get closer, a little closer. We still can't see clearly, the experts exclaimed with excitement, completely forgetting themselves. The discoveries alone made everyone feel that the trip was worth it. Barnes, Karana, steer the Challenger into that island. Olvera wished he could personally dive into the ocean to see that miraculous island, but for now, he could only use the screen to direct the Challenger to satisfy his curiosity. All right, we're moving forward. God help us. Barnes and Karana exchanged a glance, pushed the control lever, and the Challenger continued forward, slowly approaching the island ahead. Upon arrival, they discovered that the island was even more massive than it appeared from afar, with a diameter of at least 15 kilometers, and they couldn't clearly see the whole. With the closer distance, the Challenger also gained a more detailed view of everything on the island. Besides the diverse strange flora, palaces and jade towers were hidden on the island, with myriad treasure lights emanating. Holy crab, is that a sword? Could it be some kind of divine artifact? Barnes pointed to the left, where a long sword was deeply embedded in a tree trunk. The sword had a dragon scale pattern, and the surrounding seawater swirled into a cavity, with intermittent bursts of sword chi penetrating hundreds of meters through the seawater, displacing it and taking several seconds to merge, like the legendary divine weapon that can cut a river with one stroke. Over there, it's more amazing, Barnes. Look quickly. Karana tugged on Barnes's ear, pointing to her direction. There, a huge ancient bell was suspended in the seawater. The bell stood a yard high, exuding an ancient aura, with tremendous Tao sounds reverberating. Cracks like cobwebs spread across the ground, and purple-black lightning constantly swept from the bell's body, causing a dozen meters of surroundings to boil. On this island, in their sight, there were dozens of divine weapons lying dormant, spears standing like a forest, halberds like a sea, swords like waterfalls, and axes and halberds like mountains. Each weapon resonated with a clanging sound, invisibly revealing a formidable power that couldn't be ignored. Neither dared to approach, steering the Challenger away from a distance, fearing that if the Challenger got hit by any of these divine weapons, causing a breach and water leak, they would have no hope of escape in these depths, perishing without a trace. This scene was also observed by the research vessel, igniting even more intense debates. Atlanta. This must be the legendary sunken civilization of Atlantis. This ancient supercivilization mastered advanced technology, allowing them to create such a miraculous island. Those buildings and weapons must have been the former residence and arsenal of the Atlanteans. A blonde, blue-eyed scholar from Europe and America shouted angrily. As a Western historian, seeing this deep-sea island with its exquisite palatial buildings, exotic plants, and powerful divine weapons, his mind immediately conjured the legendary sunken super-ancient civilization of Atlantis. Bullshit, open your eyes. How could this possibly be Atlantis? This is clearly the legendary Penglai Fairy Island, with all the jade towers and weapons featuring our East Asia styles and characteristics. This island fits the concept of Penglai perfectly. Another historian from Japan yelled angrily. This part of Asia has been influenced by Hua country's culture. As a top historian, he's not only well-versed in Japan's history, but also deeply familiar with Hua country's culture and history, since studying Japan's history is inseparable from Hua country. This is evident as much of Japan's language is the same as Chinese. Therefore, the historian from Japan was so agitated, claiming this was Penglai Fairy Island, a legendary locale incomparable to Atlantis. Penglai Fairy Island? Is it an ancient city in the East Asia region? Eller cast his gaze toward the historian from Japan. He genuinely didn't know what it was. Penglai Fairy Island is one of the 3 immortal mountains over the sea. Legend has it that this is the abode of immortals, floating on auspicious clouds over the sea, planted with the elixir of immortality. Historically, the most famous unifying emperor of Hua country once sent a search for Penglai Fairy Island to obtain the elixir of immortality, aiming for eternal rule over Hua country through countless generations. As the scholar from Japan mentioned the elixir of immortality, the eyes of scholars at the scene turned straight, instinctively glancing at the various exotic flora on the deep-sea island. Eller was breathing heavily, with only one thought in his mind. The thought was that this island, whether it was the legendary Atlantis or Penglai Fairy Island, must become sacred and indivisible territory of their beautiful country. While the experts from the beautiful country were still arguing endlessly over the naming rights of the deep-sea island, the Challenger had already reached the center of the island, hundreds of meters away from the monolithic stone. They dared not proceed further, because around the stone, the seawater was in a bizarre, frozen solid state, seemingly held in check by some peculiar power. Both were deeply afraid that if the Challenger entered that range, it would also be rendered motionless. Though they couldn't approach, merely watching from afar was extraordinarily shocking. In front of this stone, the Challenger appeared remarkably insignificant. A feeling of being in the shadow of a monumental presence filled both Barnes and Karana. Barnes craned his neck, gazing at the towering stone, amazed. This stone is too high. There are no visible seams or cement traces. How is this constructed to stand unfazed in the deep sea? It's almost like alien technology. Perhaps it's built by Mars people. Karana concurred. The stone before them resembled a whole crystal, white on one side, black on the other, with countless runes engraved on its surface. These runes glowed and flashed, emitting multicolored halos, each rune unintelligible to them. Yet that didn't stop them from photographing them through the camera. How to study these runes would be a task for ancient text experts. Let's check the other side of the island. At this moment, Olvera's voice came through the headset communication channel, conveying a new task for the two. Tracking the sea monster was now secondary. The priority was to understand the island. Understood. The Challenger ascended in height, heading to the opposite side of the deep-sea island. But upon arrival, what they saw made their pupils contract. Here the island emitted a continuous rise of toxic gas. Within it, a submerged, twisted architecture could be seen. The architectural style was completely different from what they had seen before. Each building constructed from jagged, massive stones painted in pitch black, engraved with dizzying carvings and twisted talisman script. The architecture lacked symmetry or elegance, instead exuding bizarreness. The entire group of buildings enveloped in strong, unclean malice. Besides these eerie architectures, there was no vegetation growth at all, only unfathomable pits on the ground, bubbling ominously, seemingly the source of the toxic gas. What place is this? On the research vessel, Olvera was filled with confusion that an island could simultaneously exhibit such contrasting ecosystems. One side lush and vibrant, the other lifeless and desolate. Two ecological styles appearing on one island was something Olvera, who had studied ocean ecology all his life, had never seen. The architectural style here is grotesque. Never seen anything like it on Blue Star. I don't know why, but watching those bizarre, twisted structures, I feel very uncomfortable. My eyes are sore. Do you guys feel the same? Or is it just me? These buildings make me uneasy. Each expert was astonished. Merely seeing those buildings through the screen would arouse a subtle discomfort in their minds. Roar! Before the research vessel could reach any conclusion, a peculiar roar echoed amidst the turbulent deep-sea waters, shaking the entire strange architecture. The next moment, a dark figure shot out swiftly. It was a sea monster about 9 meters long, seemingly startled by something terrifying, desperately fleeing outward. "That's the bait fish we've been tracking," Barnes shouted, recognizing the sea monster had a shiny tracking device around its neck, the one they had attached. "It seems to be avoiding something. Perhaps there's an even more powerful creature inside." As soon as Karana spoke, in the darkness, an enormous, grotesquely thick claw, bigger than a train by several times, suddenly reached out, grabbing the fleeing sea monster and crushing it into a bloody pulp. Ah! Barnes and Karana were instantly speechless, scared stiff by the sudden scene. Seeing that monstrous claw emerging from the darkness, an intense fear swept over their entire beings. It was an ancient human genetic response, a primal fear of carnivorous beasts, with the genes warning the host to stay away from such dangerous predators. But what Barnes and Karana felt was encountering a terror beyond those predators by 1,000 times, a fear so extreme it rendered them speechless. The next moment, two beams of red light flickered in the darkness, apparently the eyes of the monster opening. An enormous shadow surfaced within the dark, approaching the Challenger. "Retreat quickly, Challenger. What are you waiting for? Leave now," the communicator blared with Eller's anxious shouts. Barnes and Karana snapped out of it, their stiff bodies regaining strength. "Fake. Quickly. Let's go, move fast. Challenger, full speed ahead. Accelerate, speed up more." Both of them pulled up the control lever. Although they had intended to continue observing the island, the sudden crisis made them forget everything else. The Challenger moved forward at high speed, but it was still too slow. The construction of the Challenger wasn't designed for speed. Even at maximum speed under deep-sea pressure, it couldn't go very fast. Before they could escape 200 meters, in that gloomy and icy deep-sea island area, a massive claw split the sea and smashed the Challenger to pieces midair. Barnes and Karana, along with the Challenger, were crushed into meat paste, drifting in the deep sea. On the research vessel there was a silence. The joyous laughter from discovering the deep-sea island vanished. The sudden death event caught them off guard. "Damn it! How could this happen? What level of sea monster is that?" Eller's face was extremely grim, looking at the now blacked-out screen. It was evident that Barnes and Karana had sacrificed for the rise of the beautiful country. Just one arm is so enormous. This sea monster's body size is at least over 300 meters. Olvera held his head, full of unwillingness on his face. His exploration of the miracle island in the deep sea hadn't even begun, and now the research was abruptly halted, which for a scholar like him was akin to a torment. 300 meters? Eller's mouth twitched slightly. In the Gashan County sea monster incident, those Dominator-level sea monsters were only 50 or 60 meters. What level of sea monster is 300 meters? Just thinking about that scene, Eller's body shuddered. "Report, sonar signal detected. Huge noise from the seawater. A big object is approaching our fleet." While the scene was still mournful over the sinking of the Challenger, the sonar soldier brought new information which immediately swept away the sadness, bringing in panic instead. "Not good. That monster is heading towards us. Evacuate here immediately. Avoid it." Mitchell and Zhuoliang are responsible for rearguard cover. In the tense atmosphere, Eller made a quick decision, ordering the two warships escorting the research vessel to stay in place to block the unknown sea monster in the deep sea, allowing the research vessel to withdraw first under the cover of the warships. The research vessel quickly accelerated and moved northward at full speed, heading to the nearest military base. Meanwhile, the danger here was immediately reported back to the command center of the beautiful country's military. The nearest Guam military base had fighter jets loading oil and ammunition with logistic support, taxiing on the runway, ready to support the battleground. But distant water doesn't help quench immediate thirst. The distance was still too far. Even for fighter jets, it was impossible to arrive immediately. "All ships enter Level 1 alert. Deploy anti-submarine rocket deep bombs to areas B4, B8. Prepare missiles. The enemy is a large sea monster. Do not be careless." The two warships staying behind were a Constellation-class frigate Mitchell of the beautiful country, with a displacement of 7,000 tons, and the Japan's frigate Moyagi with a displacement of 4,000 tons. The warship's piercing battle alert had already sounded. A large number of soldiers rushed back to their combat positions. Boom! One by one, anti-submarine rocket deep bombs were launched in the sea area behind. With a loud explosion, the deep bombs detonated. The entire seawater first shook, then surged, stirring up a huge splash. The explosion's shockwave formed ripples on the sea surface. The seawater was blasted into the air. Even the two frigates felt the strong shockwave vibration from the seawater. Many soldiers' faces turned slightly pale. Boom! 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 More rocket deep bombs detonated. The sea area seemed to boil. One could see roaring anomalies in the seawater and the fleeting explosion flames. Is it dead? On the Mitchell-class frigate, in the captain's room, Captain Fergus Tucker held a telescope, looking at the sea area that had been blown to pieces. Even the most powerful 10,000-ton nuclear-powered strategic nuclear submarine would be torn apart by the explosion shockwave under such a barrage of rocket deep bombs. Captain, the sea monster in the seawater is still advancing. Target? Zhuoliang-class frigate. It's not dead yet. However, Fergus Tucker's fantasy was soon shattered. The sonar signal showed that the sea monster seemed not to be affected much by the rocket deep bombs and was still rapidly approaching. At the same time, on the Zhuoliang-class frigate, many Japanese Navy soldiers suddenly saw an enormous shadow passing through the seawater. Their Miyagi-class frigate is 134 meters long, with a displacement of more than 4,000 tons. But in front of the shadow approaching in the seawater, the Zhuoliang-class frigate looked like it wasn't even one-third of its length. Because the speed was so fast, even though the Zhuoliang-class frigate accelerated, it couldn't outrun it. The shadow in the seawater had already reached the Zhuoliang-class side. Thud! A collision sound came. The Zhuoliang-class frigate high-arched. On the sea surface, a massive spine sticking out of the water lifted the Zhuoliang-class frigate out of the water. The Japanese soldiers on the ship staggering, rolling back and forth like balls. The ship is going to capsize. In the panic screams of the Japanese soldiers, and under the terrified gaze of the beautiful country soldiers. From the deep sea, a massive terrifying claw emerged, accompanied by twisting steel and sparks flying. The entire Zhuoliang-class frigate was smashed in half, split into two parts, seawater frantically pouring in, sinking into the sea at a visible speed. Fergus Tucker's forehead was sweating coldly. A chill shot up to his head. Immediately organize defense. Attack this sea monster with full force. Fergus Tucker shouted. On the Mitchell-class frigate, the close and weapon system sprayed shells at high speed, piling up shell casings on the deck below, but these shells landing on the sea monster's spine were like hitting thick steel, causing no damage at all. When the missile compartments on the Mitchell-class frigate opened one by one, the anti-ship missiles had just launched when that sea monster submerged into the sea again, causing the missiles to lose their target. Its rapid descent also created a large whirlpool on the ocean surface. The broken Zhuoliang-class frigate was caught in the whirlpool and sunk even faster into the sea. Even the Japan Navy soldiers who had jumped into the sea were no exception. All were drawn into the water by the whirlpool. The sea monster is approaching us. On the Mitchell, the sonar operator's voice carried an unconcealable fear. After sinking the Zhuoliang, the massive sea monster was rapidly approaching them. Fergus Tucker instinctively glanced at the anti-submarine helicopter on the deck and rushed towards it quickly. He knew that his frigate was beyond saving. The unknown sea monster beneath the water was too powerful, far beyond the so-called Dominator-level sea monsters. Only by getting on the anti-submarine helicopter was there any hope of survival. I need to report what's happening here to the Black Palace. I can't die yet. Fergus Tucker convinced himself, even if it meant facing a military court. Besides, his seventh lover, whom he just started dating, was waiting for him to return home. How could he die here? Thus, amidst the chaos among the naval soldiers on the Mitchell, their captain had already rushed to the anti-submarine helicopter, sharply commanding the pilot, "Take off immediately." Yes. The pilot glanced at Fergus Tucker, whose eyes were fierce, and dared not say more, choosing to start the anti-submarine helicopter and take off.
BZZZ.
BZZZ. The rotor blades of the anti-submarine helicopter spun, stirring up a gale, taking off from the deck and departing from the Mitchell-class frigate. Just after ascending a few hundred meters, Fergus Tucker looked down from the cockpit window and instantly saw a gigantic shadow in the deep sea, swimming below the Mitchell-class frigate. "Oh my God!" In Fergus Tucker's terrified gaze, from the stern of the Mitchell, a hideous giant claw emerged once more, grabbing the stern firmly. The rotating propellers were instantly jammed and stopped moving. Then the monster in the water seemed to be amused, swinging the giant claw. The 100-meter-long frigate, as if made of plastic, spun in circles on the sea surface as though it was a toy car in a child's hand, completely out of control. On the Mitchell, the engines, various instruments, and weapons and ammunition were also tossed around. Some ammunition exploded under violent impact, causing continuous explosions on the frigate, with some soldiers blown to pieces. But in truth, even without these explosions, the beautiful country's naval soldiers on the Mitchell couldn't escape unharmed. Under immense centrifugal force, they crashed directly into the steel cabin walls, brain matter splattered, organs displaced, bones broken, as fragile as scarecrows, dying in a most tragic manner. After playing long enough, the monstrous claw forcefully pulled the Mitchell-class frigate, with the stern down, into the water. The bow rose high, and in less than 10 seconds, the 7,000-ton frigate sank into the water. The sea bubbled and floated with debris, with no trace of the Mitchell anymore. Such a massive frigate was completely gone in just a few breaths. Witnessing all this, Fergus Tucker was nearly scared to death, urgently urging the pilot, "Fly higher, fly higher." Before Fergus Tucker's urging ended, the water below exploded violently, and a terrifying gaping maw emerged from the ocean, leaping hundreds of meters. In Fergus Tucker's last moments, all he saw was an abyss-like giant mouth, enveloping the anti-submarine helicopter. Crunch! Like eating a candy, the anti-submarine helicopter disappeared into the gaping maw. Boom! The sea monster fell back into the water, displacing tens of thousands of tons of seawater into towering waves hundreds of meters high. Its scarlet eyes glanced in the direction where the research vessel had disappeared. The sea monster puffed up its cheeks and spat the helicopter out, but only steel debris came out. Tui! Rinsing its mouth with seawater, the sea monster dived swiftly, disappearing from the surface, swimming towards the deep sea. Half a minute later, the sea monster that had just committed a massive slaughter returned to the island in the depths of the sea. Shrinking its form, crawled into a man's arms, making sizzling, joyful noises. "Well done. That research vessel doesn't need attention. Let it spread the word." Su Jie patted Xiao Qian's head. The one who had just destroyed 2 warships was undoubtedly Su Jie's life-bound poisonous insect, thousand-handed centipede. In fact, the beautiful country's discovery of this place was intentional on Su Jie's part. Sitting on the central array spirit stele of the Yinyang Sea Suppressing Palace, Su Jie stroked Xiao Qian while closing his eyes to feel. On the Yinyang stele, threads of modeled faith power were being converted into pure spirit god energy, absorbed by Su Jie's primordial spirit. These spirit god energies were so minute that they were almost imperceptible, providing negligible enhancement to Su Jie's primordial spirit. Yet Su Jie's smile was uncontrollable, because it proved that the Yinyang Sea Suppressing Palace, the human Tao-level wonder he had created, absorbed the shock, admiration, and reverence emitted by humans on the research ship. After conversion by the Yinyang Palace, the faith power was absorbed by Su Jie. Truly as described in Mystic Sky Immortal Residence, using wonders to absorb faith power and externally refining the primordial spirit, it can indeed work. Su Jie's smile grew larger, finally bursting into laughter. Though the current faith power absorbed is little, Blue Star has tens of billions of humans, an enormous number. While the faith power provided by each human is minute for Su Jie's primordial spirit, it accumulates over time, eventually leading to qualitative change. The day when Su Jie's primordial spirit becomes a yang god is just around the corner. Thinking like this, Su Jie looked down at the thousand-handed centipede. "Xiao Qian, did you enjoy playing just now?" The thousand-handed centipede nodded anthropomorphically. It was happy that it had finally helped Su Jie build the Yinyang Sea Suppressing Palace. No longer moving bricks all day, whatever it played with, it was happy. The small warships aren't fun enough. There's a better place for you to have a blast. Su Jie chuckled, sensing the nuclear material lingering in the seawater. His smile was cold as Japan continued to discharge nuclear wastewater. And apparently, Gashan County hadn't learned its lesson. If so, Su Jie would make them truly understand what pain meant. Aren't you fond of filming Godzilla? Let's give you a real one to play with. Su Jie sneered, performing a hand seal. Rumbling. Underfoot, the Yin-Yang Sea suppressing palace trembled. Layers of array radiance shone, and the sea water roared turbulently, forming an invisible bridge and ocean current, propelling the gigantic Yin-Yang Sea suppressing palace to move. As a human Tao-level wonder capable of calming the sea, the Yin-Yang Sea suppressing palace could naturally drive the ocean. Like a gigantic ship, it can move through the sea. The entire Yin-Yang Sea suppressing palace, under the push of the fierce ocean currents, seemingly slow yet quick, departed from the Mariana Trench, heading north toward Japan. Beautiful country, Black Palace. A meeting is ongoing. The beautiful country president, Jesmin, wears a serious expression, meticulously reviewing the images of what is suspected to be an ancient super-civilization's island ruins found at the Mariana Trench. Without conclusive evidence and supporting documents, he would have thought it was just another idea concocted by someone to swindle national funds. Is that island still there? Jesmin put down the materials in his hand and looked at Eller and Olvera standing in front of him. Mr. President, after the incident, our reinforcements of battleships and fighter jets arrived at that site in the Mariana Trench, but only a few remnants of the battleships were left. The deployed deep-sea vehicle and the island originally located there have disappeared. Eller's face showed some embarrassment. After all, the situation they reported seemed quite incredible, and with the mysterious disappearance of the island, it sounded almost like a farce. The existence of that island is definitely real. Olvera looked determined. As a scholar, he spoke without much reservation. If what you say is true, how did such a large island move? Jesmin tapped the documents in his hand. It wasn't that he didn't believe them. It was just that what they were saying sounded like a comedy, filled with absurdity. Olvera shrugged and spoke confidently. That's one aspect of our research topic, so Mr. President, to understand this point, I need more strength, more funding to invest in research. Jesmin's mouth twitched, finding the other party quite straightforward, immediately requesting funding from the government. What we say is absolutely true. The sinking of 2 escort ships proves the island indeed existed, and the creatures that emerged from it caused the destruction of the Mitchell and the Zhuoliang. Eller nodded in agreement and added, Mr. President, at least we can confirm that those mutant sea monsters attacking Gashan County are definitely related to that island. We might be just a hair's breadth away from the truth, and owning that island would allow us to cultivate similar sea monsters, or even create mutants like the Jekka Group's genetic warriors. Even Judith, the CIA director standing beside Jesmin, slowly spoke, Mr. President, we should heed the advice of the experts. Whether that deep-sea island is Atlantis or Penglai Fairy Island, the technology found within is crucial for our beautiful country. Jesmin remained silent for a few seconds, his fingers tapping the table. I will arrange for you to receive more research funding. Find that island as soon as possible. Mr. President, we will not disappoint you. Olvera, upon hearing this, smiled widely and contentedly said goodbye and left. Eller also saluted and turned to leave. After they left, Jesmin looked at his confidant, Judith, and asked, What do you think of this situation? Does this world really have super ancient civilizations? I'm not one of those idiots who believe in alien theories from Area 51. It takes a special kind of foolishness to believe that. Mr. President, as per your instructions, we've conducted a secret investigation through the CIA. The testimonies from the experts aboard the research vessel were consistent, and the retained data and video evidence largely rule out the possibility of collusion for deception. At the current stage, all evidence points to the fact that super-ancient civilizations might not be groundless after all. After all, there have been sea monsters dozens of meters in size appearing, and even super-large sea monsters that destroyed the Mitchell and the Zhuoliang. Perhaps the sea monster images depicted by ancient peoples were records of witnessed realities by survivors, rather than fictional fables. Judith also offered his response. Although he received high education and usually doesn't believe in such supernatural rhetoric, he always thought of God as just a figure of speech, never genuinely sincere about it. Yet Judith believes in data. The consistent statements of many experts aboard the research ship that returned were all telling him that the world might truly hold some ancient secrets unknown even to the beautiful country, buried in corners of the world. Jesmond lit a cigarette, and amidst the swirling smoke, his eyes grew even more determined. He nodded and said, "You're right. Whether that island is a remnant of an ancient civilization or not, we, the beautiful country, must seize it and plant our national flag on it." The news of the Mitchell and the Zhuoliang sinking was concealed through various means due to the intervention of the beautiful country. Subsequently, the beautiful country further intensified its exploration of the Pacific Ocean, dispatching one research ship after another, tasked with locating that mysterious deep-sea island. Even the warships of the beautiful country were dispatched in mass, conducting a net-like search, causing considerable tension among neighboring countries. However, the vastness of the sea is boundless, especially when it comes to locating an island standing in a depth of 10,000 meters. Even if the beautiful country exerts all its efforts, it's akin to searching for a needle in a haystack. For 10 consecutive days, the search teams from the beautiful country found nothing. Little did they know that the Inyang Sea Suppressing Palace they were meticulously searching for near the Mariana had already moved near Japan's sea domain. In the deep sea, Su Jie sat atop the Inyang stele, his hands forming seals changing intricately. Beneath him, countless runes of the formation magic flew, causing the entire Inyang Sea Suppressing Palace to tremble, with spirit stones depleting rapidly. The formation's power caused the surrounding sea area to stir waves, progressively increasing, and a tsunami slowly began to form. Xiao Qian, go and play. When the Inyang Sea Suppressing Palace was used by Su Jie to stir up the sea, Su Jie also patted the head of the thousand-hand centipede. Sizzle! The thousand-hand centipede couldn't wait to jump out of Su Jie's arms, swimming towards the sea. It had been building wonders for more than 2 years, and now it could finally have some fun. December 10th, 2032. Japan, Tokyo Bay. A kayaking competition is underway, with participants from various cities and counties of Japan, all paddling hard to compete for the championship. Ganbat, the Osaka team must win. If the Tokyo team wins the championship again this year, they can achieve 3 consecutive victories, and no one can stop us from winning. Don't underestimate us. We from Nagoya are not inferior to you Tokyo people. On both sides of Tokyo Bay, a large number of Japanese were gathered, cheering for their supported teams, creating a very lively atmosphere. All right, we can see now that the Tokyo team is maintaining the lead. They have already pulled ahead of the other teams by 2 boat lengths. As long as they keep it up, they can. The host, holding a microphone, was passionately explaining the progress of the competition. But while he was speaking, he suddenly saw on the live broadcast filmed by the helicopter, waves rising in Tokyo Bay. The waves were so large that they significantly slowed down over a dozen kayaks, and some even capsized. There are some unexpected situations at the scene. Large waves have arisen in Tokyo Bay. Everyone please don't panic. The host looked baffled. Tokyo Bay is an inner bay and is usually calm. Moreover, today's weather forecast also showed that the sea winds and waves in Tokyo Bay would be very mild. Otherwise, the kayaking competition would not have been scheduled for today. As he spoke, the sea became more turbulent, with waves continuously surging in from outside the bay, forcing the suspension of the kayaking competition. The Tokyo team kayak players were particularly furious, cursing, "What the hell? We were about to win the championship, damn weather." But soon, as they were cursing, their eyes bulged at the sight of the rising waves on the sea surface, rapidly forming a massive wall of water. Tsunami! All the competitors were dumbfounded, and as soon as they realized what was happening, they frantically paddled with all their might, but their speed was far inferior to the tsunami. In just a moment, The raging tsunami surged forward like an unstoppable force, swallowing all the small kayaks, and the competitors were swept away, disappearing with their fates unknown. The sudden rise of the gigantic tsunami also threw the spectators on both sides of Tokyo Bay into chaos, with everyone fleeing in panic. As Japan is located on a seismic belt with frequent natural disasters like earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, and tsunamis, the Japanese are highly sensitive to natural disasters and react quickly. The spectators quickly ran on their 2 feet, cursing the fact they weren't born with more. Stampedes were rampant, with many people being trampled to death in the panic. Rumble. The tsunami rose higher and higher, accumulating potential energy, and the enormous rising tsunami eventually overwhelmed everyone's perspective. In an instant, the irresistible tsunami surged onto both shores of Tokyo Bay. Japanese people, desperate, looked back, only to be engulfed by the tsunami like ants in the blink of an eye. Not only were people but yachts parked on the shore were overturned, cars on the roads were crumpled, and various debris such as trash cans, trees, lampposts, and tires were also swept away, mixing into the tsunami. Many Japanese people caught in the tsunami were repeatedly struck by this debris, causing their organs to shatter. Furthermore, due to years of development, the area around Tokyo Bay was crowded with buildings. As Japan is prone to earthquakes, most buildings are wooden to effectively reduce quake damage. However, when a tsunami strikes, these wooden structures become particularly vulnerable, far less safe than reinforced concrete buildings. Under the impact of the tsunami, many houses were crushed. In some cases, entire houses were pushed off their foundations, drifting along with the tsunami. People clinging to them turned into solitary islands in the waves, ultimately torn apart by the waves' relentless pushing, with the people tumbling into the waves, disappearing quickly. The entire area around Tokyo Bay turned into a lake, filled with struggling Japanese people and floating debris. After several of the most intense surges, the tsunami's accumulated potential energy gradually weakened. However, even so, it still caused many casualties among the Japanese people. The whole of Tokyo was shaken by this sudden tsunami. Police and fire engines whizzed down the streets, and rescue helicopters flew overhead, rushing urgently to the vicinity of Tokyo Bay to provide aid. However, at this time, the Japanese people did not yet know that the tsunami was merely an appetizer, and the true horror was just beginning to descend. At the Yokosuka military port at the entrance of Tokyo Bay, the port is divided into east and west by Azuma Island, guarding the maritime gateway to Tokyo. It is an important base of Japan's maritime self-defense team and the only home port of an aircraft carrier of the beautiful country's navy in East Asia. The area was also affected by the tsunami. However, the military port's location in an inward bay, with adjacent land blocking the tsunami's energy, and Azuma Island splitting the tsunami flow, reduced the tsunami's impact somewhat. Nonetheless, it is impossible to fully withstand a natural disaster like a tsunami, and the loss remained significant. But the number of casualties was not especially high, due in part to the swift response and the military port building's construction from high-standard reinforced concrete, capable of withstanding a tsunami's impact. Soldiers who climbed to the higher parts of buildings in time were able to avoid being swallowed by the tsunami, so the death toll wasn't excessively high. However, accompanied by the surging tide, an enormous shadow slowly entered this bay. What is that? On a rescue helicopter dispatched from the Yokosuka military port, a Japanese pilot suddenly saw a colossal, rapidly moving shadow outline appear in the bay. Immediately following, it seemed as if peaks were rising from beneath the sea's surface. These were clusters of spine-like mountains, followed by deep black scales, as hard as if cast from steel, each scale the size of a millstone. Rumble. More and more of the shadow in the seawater emerged above the surface, revealing a terrifying form, over 500 meters long, with eyes like 2 blazing fires, and several pale corpse hands pressing down, causing the waters to surge into countless waves. Roar. The 1,000-hand centipede let out a roar. The roar sounded like rolling thunder. It emerged from the tsunami, and the supposedly immense Tokyo Bay was merely like a slightly larger bathtub to the 1,000-hand centipede at this moment. Crash. Seawater cascaded like waterfalls from the thousand-hand centipede's back, with numerous seaweeds and small fish and shrimp hanging on it. The thousand-hand centipede's eyes were filled with excitement, thinking of how Su Jie allowed it to come out and have fun. The innate, destructive urge from the poisonous insect could no longer be restrained. The entire Yokosuka military port and more than half of Tokyo all heard the deafening roar of the thousand-hand centipede. However, the Japanese in Tokyo City were still unaware, but the soldiers in Yokosuka could indeed witness the mountain-sized giant beast emerging from the sea. Without exception, everyone who saw the thousand-hand centipede felt their hearts almost leap out of their throats, overwhelmed with shock. Boom! 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 The thousand-hand centipede landed from the sea at Yokosuka port, its vast size like a moving mountain. Wherever it tread, the ground trembled, concrete buildings cracked, and its breath turned into fierce gales, uprooting trees. For the first time, the top grade 8 refinement goo insect from the Tianyuan world publicly appeared on Blue Star in front of the world. In Yokosuka military port, due to sending out a large number of warships to search for deep-sea islands, the number of warships on standby in the port had drastically reduced at this time. The Reagan-class aircraft carrier, which originally stayed here, had also moved to the sea area near Gashan County, but this did not dampen the thousand-hand centipede's spirits. The thousand-hand centipede opened its massive mouth and bit down on a Burke-class destroyer docked at the pier. Its enormous and terrifying bite force immediately snapped the 153-meter-long, 9,000-ton displacement warship in half. Several Pale Corps hands then grabbed and together lifted a 10,000-ton displacement Ticonderoga-class cruiser docked nearby, lifting and wildly smashing it around the military port, like a mischievous child wreaking havoc. The Japanese and Beautiful Country Navy soldiers stationed here were extremely unfortunate. The thousand-hand centipede was thoroughly enjoying itself, but they were in dire straits, countless soldiers being smashed into pulp and crushed alive, leaving the entire military port in ruins. Whether it was repair docks, repair plants, or ship demagnetization facilities, vehicle repair rooms, logistics storage warehouses, fuel depots, ammunition depots, the Self-Defense Force 2nd Technical School, the Self-Defense Team Hospital, or the 7th Fleet Command, these complete supporting facilities did not escape the thousand-hand centipede's destructive hands. Even the seemingly sturdy fortresses, oil pipes, pipelines, and oil depots, these underground concealed facilities were smashed to pieces by the thousand-hand centipede as if dismantling a home. After all, when it comes to digging, no one is better than the thousand-hand centipede. These underground facilities couldn't escape the thousand-hand centipede's perception. Escape! Run! Yokosuka is under a super sea monster attack. We need reinforcements. No, this creature is too strong. We need the Air Force. In Yokosuka, the Japanese and Beautiful Country Navy soldiers were utterly collapsing. The tsunami had already tormented them enough, and now they were suffering under the thousand-hand centipede, adding insult to injury. The units completely lost command and structure, scrambling like headless chickens, only knowing to flee and shelter. As for retaliation, the warships in the port were already tilted and swayed by the tsunami, with the base submerged by seawater up to chest level, rendering most defense weapons unusable. Moreover, judging by the thousand-hand centipede's size, it wasn't an opponent that could be handled by ordinary weapons. The thousand-hand centipede was thoroughly enjoying its rampage, and every time it destroyed a warship, it would grab a new one, whether submarines, cruisers, destroyers, or even minesweepers, played like marbles by the thousand-hand centipede. In the end, the thousand-hand centipede roared and snapped the Mikasa battleship, this old relic, into two. This battleship once served as the combined fleet flagship during the Japan-Russia War and was Togo Haihakairo's ride, having raised the Z flag during the war, being hailed as Japan's national treasure. However, now, this national treasure of Japan has been snapped into pieces by the thousand-hand centipede, and with a few more stomps before leaving, it turned into a pile of scrap metal. After the thousand-hand centipede left, the entire Yokosuka military port was unrecognizable, with flames soaring into the sky, collapsed building ruins everywhere. Over a dozen warships turned into wrecks, thick smoke from the exploded fuel depot blotting out the sky, and shattered bodies of Japanese and beautiful country soldiers scattered everywhere, with at least 10,000 Navy soldiers dying here. As for the departing thousand-hand centipede, it did not return to the sea but instead continued swimming deeper into Tokyo Bay, targeting Japan's capital, the most prosperous, densely populated city in Japan, an international megametropolis with a population of 15 million, Tokyo. Tokyo. The impact of the tsunami severely damaged the coastline of Tokyo Bay. However, because Tokyo is large enough, the deeper city building clusters were minimally affected. The seawater was mostly drained away via the city's drainage system, leaving sludge and debris on the streets. A large number of Japanese civilians also took to the streets one after another, and under the government's call, they began to clear the garbage off the streets. Woo-woo, woo-woo, woo-woo. Suddenly, ear-piercing air raid sirens blared over the skies of Tokyo, their penetrating sounds transmitting into the ears of the Japanese, leaving them bewilderedly looking around. Yet soon, many Japanese felt a dark shadow overhead, as if night had suddenly fallen. Above the Tokyo cityscape, the thousand-hand centipede spread its 6 pairs of wings, like a black cloud sweeping across the land. Japanese citizens gaped, their heads raised, staring at the winged centipede that seemed to have walked out of mythology, their faces drained of color. Bang! The soaring thousand-hand centipede landed on the 634-meter-high Tokyo Skytree Tower, which struggled to withstand its weight. Huge cracks appeared on the walls, and masses of steel-reinforced concrete fell, crushing the Japanese below who screamed in terror, getting killed instantly by the falling debris. Sunlight reflected off the ink-black scales of the thousand-hand centipede, revealing an indestructible steel-like sheen. Its muscular build was as solid as rock, exuding an unparalleled sense of power and causing a change in the wind and clouds with every breath. On the head of the thousand-hand centipede, there was a ring of hideous purple bristles, where purple lightning flickered intermittently, resembling a thorny crown from afar, adding an air of dominion to its already terrifying form. Roar! The thousand-hand centipede roared, spreading its 6 pairs of wings, announcing its arrival over Tokyo. Within a radius of 10 kilometers, everyone could see the terrifying and unruly figure of the thousand-hand centipede. What is that? Are you kidding me? How's it possible for there to be such a huge centipede with wings in this world? Could it be that Godzilla-like monsters exist in the world? There's a sea monster over in Gashan County. Could this also be a sea monster? Where is our self-defense team? And what about the heavenly soldiers from the beautiful country? Why haven't they arrived yet? The Japanese were stunned. The size and overwhelming aura of the thousand-hand centipede made it seem 100 times more terrifying than any monster portrayed in movies. Anyone knows movies are fake. However, this hundreds of meters-long centipede is very real, and its ominous presence accelerated people's blood flow, made their hearts pound, and left their mouths dry. The thousand-hand centipede slowly lowered its head, looking at the ant-like Japanese below, suddenly flapping its wings as it began to fly low over the Tokyo cityscape. With the mere flap of its 6 pairs of wings, all the glass in the buildings below shattered, cars were overturned by the fierce wind, and street lamps and advertisement signs were sent flying chaotically in the air. As for human beings, it goes without saying, just like snapped stalks of straw, they were swept by the gust into building walls, leaving their bones and tendons crushed and internal organs shredded. Bang! The flying speed of the thousand-hand centipede was extraordinarily fast, and in the blink of an eye, it arrived in the densest high-rise area of Tokyo, gathering its wings and rampaging through. Wherever it passed, these high-rises were like toy blocks, getting knocked down and severed by the thousand-hand centipede. And when the hundreds of pale corpse hands fell, they crushed fleeing Japanese underneath to pulp, leaving giant handprints smeared with blood and flesh. Suddenly, the entire Tokyo city erupted with smoke and fire, and everywhere lay the ruins of buildings demolished by the rampage of the thousand-hand centipede, filled with the screams and cries of Japanese citizens. Those who thought they could escape death by hiding in buildings were also buried in the rubble of collapsing skyscrapers. Japanese citizens who attempted to flee by car were swept up with their vehicles by the 6 large and devilish wings of the thousand-hand centipede, smashing to their deaths. The entirety of Tokyo was thrown into chaos due to the arrival of the thousand-hand centipede. Smoke and flames rose to the sky, and corpses littered the ground. However, as the capital of Japan, the country naturally has elite troops stationed here. When the thousand-hand centipede attacked the Yokosuka military port, the Japanese military had already mobilized, and when the creature ran rampant in Tokyo, the troops finally arrived to reinforce. The 3rd Armored Brigade has reached the sea monster area. The enemy is within our attack range, requesting permission to engage. All armor units take aim. For the sake of Tokyo City, we must eliminate this sea monster here. Bombardment may cause collateral damage to civilians. Immediately arrange for their evacuation. An armored unit advanced along the road, and just a few kilometers away, they could see the thousand-hand centipede's silhouette. Given the immense size of the thousand-hand centipede, like a moving mountain, most of Tokyo City's buildings weren't taller than it. In such a situation, dozens of main battle tanks, rocket artillery, and self-propelled howitzers of this armored unit pointed their muzzles at the thousand-hand centipede. Fire at my command! Destroy this monster! With a command from Nishida Hikari, the commander of the 3rd Armored Brigade, countless shells roared onto the body of the thousand-hand centipede. Boom! 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 Explosions erupted in fiery bursts all over the scale armor of the thousand-hand centipede. Black smoke billowed, enveloping its massive form. Is it dead? Nishida Hikari raised his binoculars, and just as he spoke, he felt the earth tremble. The thousand-hand centipede emerged from the smoke. Nishida Hikari's heart sank because the thousand-hand centipede was not only alive but seemed completely unharmed. Keep attacking. I refuse to believe it's made of iron. Nishida Hikari shouted angrily, issuing orders for the armored tank regiment to maintain their firepower. Shells exploded continuously on the thousand-hand centipede's body. But what made the soldiers of this armored tank regiment feel despair was that no matter how they attacked, their bombardment did not affect the thousand-hand centipede's movements at all. The layer of pitch-black scale armor, as sturdy as iron, exceeded their imagination in strength. Their shells exploded on it, unable to shake it even slightly. More and more troops arrived, joining the attack on the thousand-hand centipede. But whether it was tank armor-piercing bullets, howitzers, or rockets, none could do anything against the thousand-hand centipede. The thousand-hand centipede completely ignored them, going about its destructive spree in Tokyo City, since the attacks from the self-defense team felt like mere tickling, akin to a comfortable massage. Tokyo, with an area of 2,194 square kilometers, could be roughly seen as a 20-kilometer wide by 100-kilometer long rectangle, which is quite large for humans, but not much for the over 500-meter long thousand-hand centipede. Especially since the thousand-hand centipede didn't have the typical sluggishness of large sea monsters. Its speed was agile and unmatched by its size, making its efficiency in destruction even more terrifying. Most of the time, the thousand-hand centipede was just having fun. If it were truly focused on destruction, using its abilities of spirit refining or tapping into its chaotic creature-like power, its efficiency in destruction could instantly increase tenfold. The 15 million residents of Tokyo faced the ravages of such a terrifying centipede like it was the apocalypse. The thousand-hand centipede charged through the city at high speed. On the Shinkansen, a high-speed train coming from Nagoya to Tokyo, unaware of the chaos, entered the thousand-hand centipede site at 200 kilometers per hour. This moving train intrigued the thousand-hand centipede, which rushed towards it, collapsing dozens of skyscrapers along the way. The seismic impact from its enormous body caused other buildings to crumble. The thousand-hand centipede reached the Shinkansen, and under the horror-stricken and helpless gazes of the train's driver and passengers, a pale corpse hand picked up the train and, like a whip, smashed it against the nearby skyscrapers. The train and the concrete buildings collided fiercely. The train snapped into several sections, and inside, the Japanese passengers turned into flying figures, falling from the broken train, walking towards death amidst piercing screams of despair. Wish, The thousand-hand centipede flapped its wings, moving southward, arriving in Tokyo's Chiyoda district, where it saw a splendid and majestic architectural complex and happily ran over to wreak havoc. This architectural complex was actually the Emperor's Palace, usually open to tourists, but under the destruction of the thousand-hand centipede, it was instantly a scattered ruin. The thousand-hand centipede continued its rampage, not even sparing the Jingwa Shrine in Chiyoda district from its deadly touch. This Jingwa Shrine, covering over 100,000 square meters, is annually worshipped by Japan's emperor and ministers. The thousand-hand centipede simply rolled over it, flattening the shrine. The offerings, those plates of the soldiers who died for Japan, were crushed into pieces. While the thousand-hand centipede was merrily playing in Tokyo, the sky roared with the sound of warplanes, as dozens of fighter jets soared in the blue sky, firing air-to-ground missiles, guided bombs, and even drilling bombs at the thousand-hand centipede. It must succeed. Amaterasu, bless us. May this monster be bombed to death. The Air Force will absolutely succeed. Many Japanese people in Tokyo, upon seeing this scene, fervently prayed in their hearts. Even Japan's military was anxiously watching the Air Force's efforts. The Dominator-level sea monsters in Gashan County were previously bombed to death by the Air Force, so they placed their hopes in the Air Force. Missiles and guided bombs fell, but the thousand-hand centipede did not dodge. These missiles, with explosives of hundreds of kilograms of TNT, had much more power than land artillery, yet those capable of blowing up Dominator-level sea monsters did not even make the thousand-hand centipede glance, still maintaining its indifferent attitude. The pitch-black scale armor, after the bombardment, only had a few insignificant scratches. Only the drilling bombs, with their high-speed kinetic energy and heavy metal alloy warheads, managed to crack the scale armor, but within seconds it healed. Even Japan's Air Force's attack on the thousand-hand centipede yielded no success. The thousand-hand centipede, a top-grade 8 refinement goo worm evolving towards chaotic creature, possessed certain chaotic creature characteristics in its body. These thermal weapons couldn't even penetrate its flesh defense, let alone make it use the characteristics of great path creatures, transforming its body into flames, water, and thunder, merely disdainfully enjoying the massage of these thermal weapons. Damn it! Even missiles can't do anything. What exactly is this monster? Damn, even the Air Force failed. Our attack can't harm it at all. Bastard. Why are you persecuting us Japanese people? What did we do to provoke you? In Japan's wartime command center, Japanese commanders slammed the table in disbelief. Even the Air Force couldn't handle this kind of monster. Does it really take a nuclear bomb to harm it? But the problem is, they don't even have a nuclear bomb in Japan. And even if they did, this is Tokyo. They wouldn't dare to use it. The Japanese fighter pilots watched helplessly as missiles proved ineffective and the thousand-hand centipede wreaked havoc across Tokyo, knowing their own families might also fall victim to it. Realizing this, some pilots, with red eyes, drove their fighter jets around the thousand-hand centipede, using machine guns and missiles to target the creature's eyes, mouth, and antennae, hoping to cause it some harm. The thousand-hand centipede sneezed, looking at the swarming Japanese fighter jets around it. Annoying like flies, these creatures were disturbing it slightly. The giant insect eyes revealed displeasure. The thousand-hand centipede shook its body, and the spine ridges on its back began to glow with a purple halo, lightning encircling it. The next moment, purple light rays emitted from the end of its spine, scorching the air, forming a dense laser web like a heavenly maiden scattering flowers, piercing through the flying Japanese fighter jets. Bang, 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 bang. Every Japanese fighter jet was swept and exploded mid-air by the thousand-hand centipede, transforming into grand fireworks in the sky. Afterwards, as the thousand-hand centipede moved, the purple light rays moved with it, slicing through hundreds of tall buildings, cutting them in half and toppling them. Within a radius of 10 miles centered on the thousand-hand centipede, all tall buildings were leveled. Roar! The thousand-hand centipede swung its head, flying towards the sky, having almost had enough fun. But before leaving, it opened its mouth again, beginning to brew its skyfire breath. Seconds later, the thousand-hand centipede abruptly unleashed its skyfire breath. Boom! A scorching pillar of fire erupted from the mouth of the thousand-hand centipede, the column tens of meters wide, roaring like a true dragon of flame. All Japanese standing before the fire pillar were instantly vaporized. Tanks turned to molten iron, and high-rises built of steel and concrete were pierced and shattered. In the densely populated city of Tokyo, the terrifying power of the skyfire breath carved out a river of scorching lava, with the accompanying intense heat and shockwaves igniting the surrounding buildings. While nearby Japanese were shredded by the shockwave, their innards shattered. Upon reaching the end, the skyfire breath exploded violently. It's as if a half-spherical red light dome was overturned on the ground, the high-temperature melting steel and concrete, creating a crater 300 meters deep, and the terrifying shockwave caused many Tokyo buildings to collapse like paper. From above, the lava river created by the skyfire breath sliced through the main district, making Tokyo City seem like it was parted in the middle. Looking at the destruction it caused, the thousand-hand centipede flew away contentedly, leaving behind a city of utter devastation. Tokyo, once hailed as Asia's top city, has become riddled with scars under the rampage of the thousand-hand centipede. Less than 1/10 of its buildings remain standing intact, the imperial residence torn apart, Tokyo Tower severed, Jingwa Shrine flattened, and the once bustling Ginza turned into ruins. In Tokyo City, due to the damage caused by the thousand-hand centipede and the ensuing tsunami, casualties have reached close to 10 million, with bodies outnumbering the living. Everywhere in Tokyo City, there are scenes of devastation and mourning. Survivors cling to the corpses of their deceased loved ones, or frantically dig through the rubble of buildings, attempting to unearth relatives buried underneath, their cries shaking the heavens and earth. This once most prosperous capital city of Japan has now completely fallen into ruins. Crackle, crackle. The thousand-hand centipede soared above the sky dome, its 6 pairs of wings like hanging clouds, its jet-black scale armor absorbing the rays of the sun. Lightning flickered in the crown of thorns atop its head, resembling a black storm cloud. Below the thousand-hand centipede lay the ravaged and destroyed Tokyo City. Its arrival was marked by the destruction of Tokyo City. On a small hill outside Tokyo City, a figure in red stood silently. Under the rising sun, she wore a crimson wedding dress, with fine golden threads dancing at the hem, vivid and bright like burning flames. Her eyes were as clear as autumn water, and her long black hair softly cascaded down, echoing the phoenix embroidered on the dress, exuding an elegance and nobility, a natural aura of grandeur. However, if anyone gazed directly into her eyes, they would find in them a non-human coldness and indifference, as if they could freeze one's blood. Han Ruyin held a fluttering soul banner in her right hand, dyed as if soaked in fresh blood. Haunting magical shadows wailed continuously from it, hideous and terrifying ghost faces protruding on the banner, seemingly trying to break free from their prison. 10,000 soul banner. Han Ruyin looked down, examining the 10,000 soul banner in her hand. In the past 2 years, this soul banner has absorbed the souls of various livestock, the souls of humans during the war in Utai country, and now the millions from Tokyo, allowing the banner to ascend to the level of the 10,000 soul banner. Currently, there are over 10 million Een souls on the soul banner, with Tokyo alone providing 1 million Een souls. It takes the souls of 10 ordinary humans to create 1 Een soul. A 10 million level soul banner would require the blood sacrifice of 100 million human souls in Tianyuan world to be crafted. But this is impossible even in Chongzhou, where the demon path flourishes the most within the Deli dynasty. No devil has committed such an atrocity, nor are there so many people available for slaughter. At this moment, this 10 million soul banner stands as the most powerful soul banner of the Dali dynasty, unmatched, the true supreme treasure of the demon path. The destruction of Tokyo not only forged the 10 million soul banner. Han Ruyin herself also gained greatly. The intense fear emotions radiated by the Japanese during the thousand-hand centipede's attack allowed Han Ruyin to absorb numerous fear emotions, propelling her further along the path of the 8th grade evil spirit, nearing the day she achieves the 9th grade fierce ghost. After storing the 10,000 soul banner, Han Ruyin glanced up at the distant sky dome where the thousand-hand centipede roamed wildly, then turned and vanished like a phantom. Outside Japan's sea domain, beneath a seabed several kilometers deep, the Yin-Yang Sea suppressing palace lay in wait. Sitting cross-legged on the array spirit steel, Su Jie's mind stirred as he glanced upwards. There, Han Ruyin's body seemed to merge with the seawater, yet also appeared as ethereal and unreal as if it could vanish like foam at any moment. Husband, it's been completed. Han Ruyin took out the 10,000 soul banner and handed it to Su Jie. Let me take a look. Su Jie's eyes lit up, examining the 10,000 soul banner with interest. Darling, please muffle the commotion slightly, Su Jie told Han Ruyin, not wishing to cause too much disturbance. Han Ruyin nodded, and her red wedding dress spread like a canopy, isolating the surroundings from any commotion, keeping the outside world unaware. Raise the banner. The next moment, Su Jie forcefully swung his arm, activating the 10,000 soul banner. The world lost its color. The seawater boiled and churned, and millions of soul banner heads howled out, constructing a grand array. Seams of water opened up in the sea, through which emerged an overwhelming and soul-shaking force. It was the power of the Tao River. Su Jie was slightly stunned, not expecting the 10,000 soul banner to also connect to the Tao River, which reminded him of the mysterious ancient mirror within his sea of consciousness, the mystical mirror that helped Su Jie master the powers of the Tao River early on, allowing him to use the Dharma form even at the God unification realm. Earthquakes trembled, and a killing intent spread wide. Su Jie took out the 7 luminary Star Lord ring from his storage bag, a low-grade spiritual treasure he had seized from the Fire Cloud Palace. Boom! 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 Su Jie infused spiritual energy, activating the 7 luminaries Star Lord ring, causing several undersea volcanoes to rise, threatening to erupt with scorching magma and terrifying heat. Yet the 10,000 soul banner only slightly moved its surface, and the aura of the Tao River surged forth, causing the freshly formed undersea volcanoes to suddenly collapse. The 7 luminaries Star Lord ring in Su Jie's hand also trembled slightly, accumulating more tainted and corrosive curse auras, dimming its spirit light considerably. This happened even though Su Jie did not fully activate the 10,000 soul banner. Noticing the misalignment, Su Jie immediately pulled back. After all, it was his spiritual treasure, and he would grieve if it was damaged. Nevertheless, when Su Jie looked at the 10,000 soul banner, his eyes were now filled with joy. Spiritual treasures are crafted by Purple Mansion realm cultivators, and for the 10,000 soul banner to easily suppress and even destroy a low-grade spiritual treasure signifies a level exceeding ordinary mid-grade spiritual treasures, potentially reaching top-grade spiritual treasure, or even possessing the elegance of a Tao treasure. The magic artifacts of Tianyuan world progress from weak to strong. Magic artifact, magical treasure, spiritual treasure, and most Taoist platform realm powerhouses wield magical treasures. Users of spiritual treasures are rare, whereas Tao treasures, which belong to a level above spiritual treasure, interact with Tao. This Tao refers to the Tao River. Currently, the 10,000 soul banner has just a hint of that connection. What a treasure! And we must thank Japan for its contribution.